all of it was traced back to one mistake, because it's the only thing that you can't go back and fix later. After 25 years or 30 years of marriage, the kids have left the home and there's no marriage left. Can the house or the structure be saved? Yes, but the foundation needs to be rebuilt. Monday, and I thought I knew exactly where my life was going. By Friday, it's all washed away. Most of us are building everything that's valuable on frozen ground. What if I told you that every unstable thing in your life, whether it be a relationship, whether it be your purpose in life that keeps moving, whether it be peace that never lasts, all of it was traced back to one mistake that we're making, and we're not even aware that we're making it. That mistake is an engineering mistake. Let me explain to you. When an engineer goes to build a structure or a building, whether that building be a house, whether it be a bridge or even a skyrise, they follow a rule, and that rule is called the permafrost line. What happens in the winter, the ground freezes, and when the ground freezes, water expands and the ground heaves. And then come the summertime or the spring, the ground thaws out and it collapses back down. And this repeats year after year, year after year. The ground's moving up and down, up and down. So then if you were to build on that ground, lay the foundation, then that foundation is moving up and down with the winter. But if you dig below what is called the permafrost line, below where weather can actually reach, then you build on there. That's stable earth. No matter what storms rage above, that ground won't move and hasn't moved in 1,000 years. And whether you know it or not, your life has a permafrost line. And most of us are building everything that's valuable on frozen ground. Any legitimate builder will tell you one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive, part about building is the foundation. It's not the fancy fixtures or the paintings on the walls or the furniture. And the question would be why? Because it's the only thing that you can't go back and fix later. Once you build on that foundation, you're committed. Let me give you an example. You ever seen a building, church or something like that, that's been there for 500 years, and it's absolutely a beautiful building? It's stately in nature. It looks like it's solid, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Then you look at some buildings that they've been there maybe 50 years, and it looks like the whole thing needs to be tore down. You can't exactly put your finger on it. You don't know why it needs to be tore down, but it's just looked wrong. What makes the difference? It's the foundation. See, when you build on a foundation that's not solid and everything begins to move up and down when weather or storms come, then you'll start seeing cracks show up. That's when doors won't shut, windows get jammed, cracks show up in the walls, and you wonder, well, this thing was so pretty, it was so beautiful when it was first built, but it cost a lot of money. You put in a lot of effort, a lot of hopes and dreams, but yet here it is a few years later and it didn't last. It's because the foundation wasn't deep enough. And many times our foundation is our ideology, and our ideology, or the things we believe. When I say ideology, the things we believe, we build upon those things. Those are our foundational things that we build life structure on. And when trials come in life or disappointments come, which they come to everyone, and if it's not on a solid foundation, solid understandings, solid ideologies, then they move up and down, and then cracks start showing and everything starts imploding. But if we want to have something that'll last 50, 60, 70 years, even to a legacy, that it was ideologies and a life and an understanding that we could pass down to our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, then we have to be sagacious on our foundations. And you wonder, well, why would somebody build on a shifty foundation? Because remember, if it's a structure or a home, it's cheap. They don't plan on being around for a while. It's hard. You got to dig down deep and put in and be very sagacious on how you put everything in. And on some areas of the country, it's 6 feet. Areas in the world up in Canada, it may be even deeper. And you build on these foundations because you want something to last, but it's going to cost more. But if you're not planning on being around for a long time, then just basically build on whatever you want. But one thing I've noticed is that many times somebody would have a house that's coming apart, and it might be in the upstairs bedroom or something. They got the windows won't shut, and there's a big crack above it. So they'll call out a contractor, and the contractor will come, and he'll take a cursory glance at the issue. And then when he looks at the issue and sees that the whole thing is like maybe the whole window is fallen, and then he'll ask to look at the foundation. And the person being a novice would say, no, it's not the foundation. The problem's here in the second story. And he'll say, yes, but I want to look at the foundation. And they'll be convinced that he's looking at the wrong spot. And they will think, well, he's unqualified. I need to get rid of him because the problem's up on the second story. And they not knowing the whole building process, then they don't understand that the foundation most likely is the problem if the structure's falling. The same thing, the way a counselor or a psychologist or somebody like that will do if they're reputable. You'll have where your kids disrespect you and your relationships are breaking down. You come to find out that after 25 years or 30 years of marriage, the kids have left the home and there's no marriage left. And it's all falling apart. And a good counselor will go back to your original ideas that you build upon. And you'll think, well, it has nothing to do with that. It's the love started fading in the last 5 years, or the kids, when they hit their teenage years, is when the disrespect showed up. Well, no, it was foundational principles that you build upon. Those foundational principles, the cracks are showing up here in the later years, or up top is where you're seeing them. But the reason you're seeing them is because your foundation is falling. And if you want a solid foundation, then, or you want the relationship to be repaired, can the house or the structure be saved? Yes, but the foundation needs to be rebuilt. You need to go back and re-examine everything. Will it be costly? Absolutely. Will it take effort? Absolutely. But the number one thing it's going to take is accountability. So then I would say to you, what's one thing in your life that you would look at and identify, not necessarily do anything about it, but just identify it and say, this area is falling apart or having problems, and my purpose in life, it seems to shift. It never really was flushed out. Well, then what did you build your purpose on? Was your purpose built on money? Well, remember, money is something that's beneath you, and you built your whole ideology, your whole identity on something that was beneath you, and you wonder down at the end of the road why, that you're feeling like you have no purpose or it was all meaningless. See, when we start doing that type of stuff, then that's where things start falling apart and showing up. When we built our marriage, it wasn't on compatibility. It wasn't built on character. It wasn't built on mutual respect and an identity that's to be respected. A relationship that's built on surface level attraction, which we all should be attracted to the person that we're going to journey life together. But it's more than that. If that's your foundation, looks fade, and looks are completely irrelevant when you're in bitter disagreements and you actually don't even like to be around that person anymore, then looks don't really matter, do they? Because you don't have any respect for the person. So then it would say the foundation on which the relationship was built upon frozen ground, and then it moves up and down. So then that's why you're finding problems. So then the question would be, where is our identity? Where do they converge, where we do have agreements? You see, that's where we would go back to and say, well, at least we have A, B, and C in common. And that portion about them is to be respected. It might be something as simple as realizing everybody has intrinsic value. And every person, no matter who they were designed and created for a purpose. And that in itself is to be respected. Maybe they don't live be anything beyond that, but that's not something that's earned, that every human being has intrinsic worth. So they may not build upon their intrinsic worth, but yet that's the one thing that none of us need to earn. So then I'd say that when we begin to look at our life, could we this week, could we target one area in our life that we would say cracks are showing up? Why? The peace that I had on Monday, and I thought I knew exactly where my life was going, by Friday, it's all washed away. You know, it's kind of funny. There's a scripture in the Bible that a carpenter told us how to build, and that carpenter was Christ. He said, there was a man who built his house upon a rock, and there was a man that built his house upon the sands. And then he began to explain the parable where when the floodwaters and the storms of life came, the man that was built upon a solid ground, it stood and weathered the times and weathered the storms. But the man that built his house upon the sands, when the storms of life came and the floodwaters beat up against it, it washed it away, and the loss was great thereof. He wasn't talking about necessarily just the surface. He was talking about the foundation, what you build upon. And those are timeless truths that man knew how to build 2,000 years ago. And the funny thing is that there are timeless truths in every culture that people have learned and they've hewed out, they've tested and they've tried. And these timeless truths, they're things that are worth building upon, and they pass them on to us. And we that are not very sagacious or wise on how we build on anything, thinking it doesn't matter. Well, the scriptures tells us, remove not the ancient landmarks. Okay, and what is that? Those are the ancient, timeless wisdoms that keep society together, that makes you a good neighbor, that makes you a good portion of community, that makes you a productive person in this world, that makes you to where your kids love you when you have nothing to offer them. It makes you that you're such a productive and happy person. And some of these truths, that I can't get into all of them, but some of these truths is realizing that before I even start, maybe I want to be successful and do well in life, but the question is, what is success? You know, if you have friends and friends that respect you and love you, and you have family members and your children, they love you and respect you and look up to you, man, you're successful. You don't need a nickel you are successful in this life. So then you have to decide what is success and what is adding to. None of us want to be paupers. We want our needs met. But if we make that our whole identity, then we ended up serving something that has an inability to love us. We loved it, but it didn't love us. We gave ourselves to it, and it didn't even know we existed. We were living, breathing entities, and we had potential, and we served something that was dead. It was not alive. But yet, then again, if we turn back around and said, well, some of the most important things in life don't cost a nickel. When you come home and you have a hard day at work, instead of dumping everything onto the family, You turn back around and see the kids, sit everything else aside, bend down on your knee and see your little toddler. Hug his neck and ask him how was his day and let the stress go. See, that's the foundation. You wonder why the kid at 16, it seemed like the respect all went away. No, it didn't go away at 16. It was eroded year after year with every trial, every passing storm. The foundation heaved up and down, up and down, up and down. And now at 16, 17 years old, 20, you're just starting to see the cracks show up. But if you realize my relationship with my children is more important than my coworkers or my boss not liking my performance, or the job is shifting, or the bills that maybe are not being paid, the relationship with that toddler, yeah, it's more important than all of that. It's more important to go back when you had a stressful day and maybe you did yell at the kids or spoke harshly to your spouse. The integrity to go back and pull your kid up on your lap. And the kid is 2, it doesn't understand. The kid doesn't know. But you say, hey, daddy or mommy, that, daddy's sorry. I shouldn't have been so harsh with you, and daddy loves you. And the kid doesn't understand even what you're saying, but it'll look back and you'll look back and you'll be able to say, look, I was always willing to come back and say, I'm sorry. Your father never was perfect. I never claimed to be perfect, but I did claim to love you. I did claim to care about you. To your spouse, whether or not they say they're sorry, that's got nothing to do with it. You may be a better person than what they are. But I'll tell you one thing's for sure. You have an integrity on the inside that you can say, when I saw that I was wrong, I went back and apologized. I always was mindful to make my wrongs right. Well, that'll do 2 things. One, it'll make that person in their heart know that that person has integrity. They may be a greater person than me. They always hold everything accountable. And one thing's for sure, when you have to go to them and say, honey, or to your son or to your child, you might say, yeah, what you said was wrong. The way you handled it was wrong. You mistreated me. You mistreated the kids. They know in their heart that you're holding them accountable. Yeah, but they saw you hold yourself accountable first. And that's something that's undeniable. The kid at 16, when you say, son, you shouldn't talk to me like that. I'm your father. And you don't give me respect because I earn it. You give me respect because of who I am. And the kid knows you're holding him accountable. But one thing he knows, since he was a kid, he remembers from the beginning, dad always held himself accountable first. And if dad thought he was wrong, he was the first to apologize. He was the first to say, no, this family doesn't do that. We don't do that. That's not the principles we live by. You see, and maybe we don't run down people. And then when your kid's 16 and he's talking trash about you, talking trash about his mother, you say, hey, hold on. Look, your mother never claimed to be perfect, or I never claimed to be perfect. But one thing that we never have done, we don't trash people. So it's not right for you to trash me for not being perfect. You see? Well, the foundation that you build upon. So then when the kid is 20, 25, 26, and they don't want to be around their parents, and I see like this, and I'm a counselor. So I've counseled a lot of people, probably thousands of people. It's in 30 years, you lose count. But I see older people, and these are hard truths. I see older people, and they're in an elderly home, and they say, my children never come and see me, and they stuck me in here, and nobody comes and sees me. Well, immediately I think, yeah, that's probably, I'm not saying every case, but it's probably because when they were 2, you shoved them into daycares because you had to live your life. You taught them how to act, to treat other people by your actions. And now they're just doing what you did. What you did to them as children, they're doing to you as an elderly person. They have to live their life. And you taught them that you're more important than they are. Now they're teaching you that they're more important than what you are. You see, so immediately my mind runs back to the foundation. Not saying these things can't be fixed or helped or patched up. They can be. But remember what I said, it starts with accountability. And a lot of these stuff can be avoided if we don't build on surface level things. We don't build our life on frozen ground. We build our life on solid ground, something that we know that will last 10 years from now. I can go back, or 20 years from now, I can go back to my friends, my spouse, my children, and say, hey, look, your father never claimed to be perfect. I never required you to be perfect, but I did require you to make the efforts and hold yourself accountable. I held myself accountable when you were a child and didn't even understand. I tried to always to do and act with integrity, and when I made mistakes, didn't I always come and apologize? Didn't I always say, I shouldn't have done that, this is what I should have done, and for that I'm sorry? See, those are foundations that are hard to build upon. You got to dig deep to get on those foundations. But I will tell you this, you'll have a structure that'll last a millennium. It'll last 1,000 years. It'll be passed down from generation to generation. And one thing you'll notice that you'll see people who say, well, my grandmother always told me. See, they go back to those timeless truths. Well, my grandfather, one thing for sure, I know that one thing my dad always did. You see? And they stand upon them. They're worth building on. Or they'll say, maybe my uncle or I knew a man one time that he was a wise man. He was a neighbor, and he always told me. And those things, you'll see them, and what are they saying? Whether they know it or not. Somebody that drew out ancient truths, hard truths, wisdom that needs to be accomplished. I heard a investor, CEO investor, I can't think of his name, but right off. But if you look it up, you may have already came across it. But they asked him how to be rich, and he started to give some advice on young people how to be rich. And then he stopped and said, hold on, let me, and I'm paraphrasing it. He said, let me be real first. What is rich? He said, if your grown kids want to come home to Sunday dinner and they want to be around you, that's rich. And if your spouse and your wife likes to be around you more than anybody else on earth, that's rich. If you have friends that want to come over and just kick a stone with you, that's rich. Somebody just wants to come and hang out with you for coffee, that's rich. So those things that are rich, then they're worth putting in the extra effort. So back to my statement that if you could identify one thing this week that was cracking up, one thing that was showing stress marks, could you just identify it and then think, well, maybe, just maybe, I have built on that area where it wasn't the best ideology, and in doing so, it's showing stress marks. And then identify that, and then ponder on it. Until next week, in our next episode, I'd like to deal with who's building our foundations. Are we letting builders that are engineers qualified to build our ideology? Are they the ones that are building our foundation? Or are we letting 16-year-old TikTok influencers that we wouldn't let them build a shed in our back lawn? We're letting them build the structure of our lives, and we're building everything else upon them. So next week, I'd like to get into that. So until then, think about that, and I'll see you in the next one. If you liked it, then hit like. It helps. Save this video and share it with somebody you think might help. And we'll promote the channel, and we'll change the world that we're in one life at a time, one decision at a time. Thank you.